It's time now for our Entre Nous segment. Solange Mijan joins us in the studio. Solange, I can tell by what you have with you today, we're going to be talking about cheese. Just to remind everyone, today, March 27th. Is that today?
It is
yes,
today.
It is. March 27th is the National Day of Cheese, or the Journée Nationale du Fromage. And you're going to walk us through some of the rules about cheese, particularly how to cut it. So start with the examples you've got there.
We've created a cheese board for you to illustrate basically the intricacies and the difficulty of cutting cheese correctly. But before we get into that, there are some pointers that are good to know about actual cheese boards. Ideally, a cheese platter is going to have a vache, a brebis, and a chèvre, or a cow, a sheep, and a goat cheese. Also, it's going to have cheeses of different textures and different strengths. You're going to eat cheese in a particular order, from the mildest to the most pungent, so as not to ruin your palate for the next cheese. As for when to bring this out to guests, cheese in France is nearly always served at the end of a meal. There are exceptions to this. Fondue, for example, is a meal in and of itself. A host may decide to have an apéro dînatoire, or an early evening drinks meal where the cheese and possibly sliced cold meat as well is served. As for what to drink, contrary to what many think, you can absolutely drink white wine with many cheeses. Actually, certain red wines are considered a no-no, particularly with chèvre cheeses, for example, because the tannins will drown out the taste of the cheese. Now, already this cheese board has a mini faux pas in it. Many hosts will actually make a cut to invite guests. Say, for example, with this one, they'll make a cut into that to invite guests to entamer, or to start a camembert. As for what to cut it with, well, there are all types of cheese knives. There are even spoons, which is what you eat the famous Mont d'Or with. But your average cheese knife looks a bit like this. And here, there are a few elements to keep in mind. It's often a very thin knife. It can have teeth like here, and there are sometimes holes in it to reduce the surface area so that a softer cheese won't stick to it. And quite often, and it has this little double-pointed end. This is handy because it means that you don't have to touch the cheese. You can slice into it and then stab it and put it onto your plate.
All right. Now, on average, French people eat about 27 kilos of cheese every year. That's over 50 pounds. I mean, obviously making France the #1 cheese consumer in the world. So I'm assuming the French generally know how to cut the cheese.
Yeah, cutting cheese correctly is an important thing to know in France. And doing it wrong is a surefire way to have your French host go bug-eyed on you in surprise if you do it wrong, whether you're French or not. Now, this isn't to say, though, that all French people, or it is to say, rather, that all French people have mastered the complex geometry and minefield that comes with cutting the over 1,200 cheeses in France. Actually, the vast majority of French people, well, they buy their cheese at the supermarket and not at a fromagerie, so their purchases are often, but not always, somewhat easier to cut. They're already pre-cut. Of course, the proper rules are also often up for debate. This is France, or as Charles de Gaulle has said to have said, in regard to the difficulty of ruling the country, how do you want me to govern a country where there are 258 varieties of cheese? There's actually a debate on whether he said that number or another number in 1962, as the quote wasn't recorded. Needless to say, there are lots of ways to do it, and lots of ways to debate about how to do it.
All right, so now I'm intrigued. How do you do it? How do you cut the cheese?
Well, the rule of thumb is actually goes quite well with the French national motto of liberté, égalité, fraternité. Or liberty, you do it as you want when it's just you and your cheese, when you eat at home by yourself. To each his own. And then there's equality and fraternity, because the idea is to have enough for everyone to have a fair slice, with each slice having both the heart and the rind of the cheese. One of the easier ones is the camembert. Okay, it's right here. You cut it like you would a pie. So you start in the center and you go outside. I'm going to just do this very quickly. I hope I'm doing it right. There we go. Oops. If it's already been cut and there's the gooey inside that's plopped out of the wheel, do not just take that gooey inside. You need some of the rind as well. As for the rind, whether you eat it, that's up to you. But you do have to be careful here about how much you carve off of the end. You can get some shocked faces if you just say cut there and leave too much of the inside. So next up is the pyramid.
Yeah, that one always, I never know what to do.
It seems tricky. This is a chèvre cendrée, Valençay. And again, it is quite simple, though, because it's the same concept as the round ones, of having a bit of the center and a bit of the wider part on the outside. Ditto, and I'm not going to touch it because it stinks, is the very red and orangey maroilles. Here, again, with the maroilles, you do not do slices, but you go from the center right there and you go around. Careful with your fingers here. They will smell if you touch the orange, and we'll get to why they are so stinky in just a minute. Next up is the heart. This is a Neufchâtel. It seems a little more complicated to cut, but the rules are actually not that bad either. If you keep in mind that the center of the heart is right there, okay?
The heart of the heart.
The heart of a heart. Where I personally find that it gets quite tricky is the Brie. In practice, you may see people taking thin slices all the way along. All the way sort of across. But cheesemongers say that the correct way is actually to cut at an angle at the heart. So actually to cut that first bit off and then divide up on the rest.
Right, always leave the point on the brie.
Yeah, yes. Now, Comté. Pâte cuite is a harder cheese. The natural thing to do, you'd think, was to make slices all the way up. But the problem with that is at the end, the person gets stuck with the end of the rind. Again, égalité, fraternité. So to do it correctly, you do thinner, but if it's a long piece of Comté, you do thinner pieces at the bottom, then a bit wider pieces that you cut in two towards the middle, and then at the end, you apply the pie method of going like that. Last but not least is Roquefort. Now, my fingers will smell from this.
It's okay.
It's okay.
All for a good cause.
Yeah, exactly. My introduction to these etiquette rules actually happened with Roquefort. During my first years in France, I'd cut it like this. I'd cut from here, much to the oh-la-las of the people I was with. With Roquefort, you actually have to keep in mind that the sides and the top are more pungent. So the center, for cutting purposes, is actually in the middle on the bottom, and then you do the pie method.
I can smell it from here.
I know, I'm sorry. So there are many ways to cut, but it's not easy, but it is manageable.
All right, Solange, we just have a minute left. You promised to tell us why cheeses are sometimes so smelly.
Yeah, it's important to cut the cheese correctly. For those that don't know, there is an American expression, who cut the cheese, which actually means to pass gas. Anglophones in this newsroom didn't know that from in the UK. This is due, of course, the smelliness is due, of course, not only the smelly aroma comes from the fermentation process, the mixture of bacteria, fungus, yeast that is part of cheese making. Some of the bacteria produces a gas in it that has sulfur in it, and that's why it smells. As for why maroilles, okay, I'm going to touch it. Why it smells so funky? Well, the aging process for the rind is that they pour salt and water solution on it in the aging process, which gives it its orange color and also its funk. It's actually, though, quite not very strong on the inside.
That was amazing, Solange Moujon. Thank you so much. You are our official cheese expert now here at France 24, Solange Moujon, with our Entre Nous. Solange, thank you very much.